Jason, how are you
Craig,
doing?
I'm back.
You're
How are
back.
you, mate?
No,
Yes, five.
number one.
Yeah,
What are we up to now?
actually think we're at five. If my
Five.
memory serves me well, yeah, five times. Always a pleasure to be on Tell Craig My Story and talking all things Metallica,
Yes.
mate. So again, thanks for having me. Thank you.
I found it an appropriate time, and you just said before, was it almost 2 years to the day the last
It
time?
is 2 years to the day, Craig. Yes, since they released their first single off their upcoming new album, which has obviously been released, but at that particular point, yes, off 72 Seasons. Yes, the 11th studio album.
Before we talk about that, I want to say two words to you. I want to say Metallica, Australia.
Yes, it's written right there, mate, deliberately.
That's this. That's right.
I mean,
Finally.
it's the focal point. Finally, the PTSD is all dropped. I can actually breathe now. Like there's excitement in the air. There's shows to look forward to in our own home country. Sorry, and yeah, yeah, absolutely great news across for the Australian Met family for sure. Absolutely brilliant.
So when I saw you when I was in Australia last time, there was rumblings, there was rumors that there's talking about coming here, and I think I told a few people, but I got told actually last year about this
Yeah.
that from some good sources that they were definitely coming to Australia, but they didn't give too much details other than they're coming next year. So that's been true. What were you hearing about, Jason?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, we all know people in that world, in that periphery of life where people know people, and yeah, you do hear rumours. Some are quite substantial, and you do get half truths, and you can read between the lines. But very similar. Always was on the cards to do Australian shows. They always fit Australia in, particularly after the major markets across Europe and the US. There's always a B market run through Australia on every tour from right back to 1989 for the Damaged Justice tour when they first visited Australia. So it was always on the cards, but it's always, you read between the lines, you can build excitement, you can read into certain things. But when it's official, you get those dates, you get excited about the tickets, and anxious about the tickets, mind you. But then, yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, definitely, as you know, but definitely great to finally get the official word that they're coming, and that's always an exciting thing.
Yeah, definitely. And then, as with recent times with ticketing, they don't really give you much time to prepare for buying the tickets. I think they gave us like 5 days for pre-sale.
Yeah.
Is that right? About 5 days?
In and around that. But yeah, I think they released the dates on a Thursday to Tuesday. So yeah, just adds to the PTSD, right? To the anxiety and the stress of working through the time frame. You got work, you got where you could, making sure you got time to prepare to like give yourself every opportunity to get the ticket. So yeah, not a fun process. Always great at the end when you get the tickets, but that process is quite stressful. Like, no doubt, it doesn't get any easier as time goes on. And with a band like Metallica now in their actual status within the music, like in the music world, they're so big, and it's a challenge to get tickets.
All the I Disappear have now sold out.
They have. So I Disappear is one of the enhanced experience tickets. So you have your general lot of tickets, then you have your enhanced experience tickets, which incorporates right from the very top, which is in Nothing Else Matters, which is a meet and greet production tour, and then Snake Pit, moving down to a Snake Pit ticket option there, down, filtering down into your early entry, right down into like GA, and then your I Disappear encapsulates those fans that want to hit the road to get to every show possible. Yeah. So that's my end of stuff. All the Snake Pit stuff was all great. But like for me, just get to every show and get on the road, big road warrior. That's where I fit into stuff. That's the best place to be.
And it's so interesting. One of the very first podcasts that we did, or that I did, was me and you sitting in the hotel in Perth, waiting for that tour that never happened. So
Yeah, the tour ever was.
take
It
it.
was Brisbane, exactly right. We just decided just to do the cities without the band showing up. And I do remember, I do. That's yeah. Again, you brought back a lot of PTSD with a lot of those that particular time frame. Let's hope we
Yeah.
get an opportunity to do it next year with sitting in a room with the band ready to play the next day. That would
Yeah.
be a
And
full circle moment.
yeah, and just looking at the tour schedule, it was very interesting because they've got this schedule. They've had it for the no repeat where it's just Friday,
Yeah,
Sunday, going to a different city.
yeah.
But they're doing it. They're not doing this time. Why do you think that? And 3 shows every, one show every 3 days. I think that's going to be a little tough for the band, don't you think?
Within that though, I will add, slightly disappointed they still didn't use the format. They not so much the stage. They could have. I feel they could have. And looking at ticket sales, you could easily argue you could put a no repeat weekend format within Sydney and Melbourne quite easily, and gave this Aussies fans that opportunity to see that format, because within that format you had around 32 different songs, which was really phenomenal. You know, you could split your greatest hits up. You can bring in a couple of one-offs, some deeper cuts, and all, and that part of it as well. So that wasn't the disappointing part of it. Not that I'm grateful that they're not, that they've decided to come. Of course, that's the priority, and that's a really great thing. But slightly disappointed that at least 1 or 2 cities didn't get the no repeat format.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Were they going to bring the stage down in 2019? Was that the
They
schedule
were.
plan, or were they going to do the same? Oh,
No, the worldwide tour, which incorporated 8 shows, was the full production stadium show, which was an end of stage production. Had the M and the A on the end. You had the 3D sort of screens at the back of the stage, etc. I think that was a lot more easier to get in and around. I think this production is probably 3 times the size. The donut stage is really big within itself, and then you had your 8 towers, which again, which is not only just your optics and your lighting and your video production all incorporated in those towers. So massive production. So I just think from a business logistical standpoint, it just didn't fit in Australia, and that's the most cost-effective way. And unfortunately, Australian fans, or the majority of Australian fans, don't get that opportunity to see that show.
like we're talking about, would there be any backlashes with the fans? But obviously, that's not the case. Tickets selling out very quickly.
That's with even within Australia, and even going back to there was a lot of backlash with what happened in 2019. It was always going to be interesting to see how the Australian market perceived all that. But if anything, and you rightly said, you're 100% right, it didn't make any difference, because the demand for tickets was like, within Australia, is the most I've actually ever seen. Like it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's interesting that I saw that the black ticket is still available for the US tour next year. So just goes to show you how popular this Australian tour, and the price was very cheap. Like
Yes.
I was talking to some some US fans, and they were saying when you convert it, that was like 450 or 460 US dollars for the black ticket, or the I Disappear. So that's super cheap.
Oh, yeah. Well, it always falls in the US favour, right, with conversion with our dollar. But from an Australian fan's perspective, if, for argument's sake, it was $750, if you do every show, the 6 shows, that's $125. So, and that's in GA. So, I mean, as you rightly say, that's value for money, and that's the best option, in my opinion, for to do the tour. Just get to as many shows and really experience Metallica. Because I'll probably just add this. More than likely, it's the last time we'll see them here, which is sad on one side, but that's just where we're at with the band. So taking that opportunity to see more shows is
you got to
definitely one
take
a lot of
it.
people. Yeah, you got to take it for sure.
Yep. It's taken this long to get here. 12 years. It was 12 years. So Yeah, don't miss the opportunity if you get a ticket. Definitely get there. And I know people from all over the world are coming and taking advantage of coming to see our beautiful country. So if you're thinking about it, just do it. Come to Australia, and you'll have a great time. And speaking of touring, you've just come back from Mexico City.
Mexico.
The last shows of the of that repeat for this year, right?
It was, yeah. When they released the first single of the album, they actually released all the dates, which were 2 years in advance. So you had dates in 2002 all the way up to 2024. And that was scheduled to be the last shows of the No Repeat Weekend World Tour. And we actually spoke a little bit about where Australia fits in all that. And as I said on that particular podcast, it will evolve and it will morph into a different part, but still fall under the M72 World Tour. And that's exactly what's happened essentially. But what they've done is they've actually incorporated more shows in a more B market because it's so successful, right? The format and everything's been so successful that they've added more shows, actually 21 shows in the US next year. So, yeah, wow. So getting back to the Mexico City shows, I saw the last 4 of the 2024 leg of the M72 World Tour. So yeah, that was wild. That was absolutely an incredible experience.
Yeah, had some good experiences, but how was the weather there, mate? I saw some videos.
The weather. I know what you're alluding to. I mean, to experience my first hurricane was quite unique and not something that it wasn't really anything I had on my must-do list for the Mexico experience, but it was an experience, right? So it was crazy. So that was in between both weekends. A few of us went to Cancun, which is on the Caribbean side of Mexico, and Helene come through. Actually, the Yucatan Peninsula had actually passed through that and then went into the Bay of Mexico and really revved up and So it wasn't really one of those things that like you put on your must-do list, but yeah, definitely an experience.
Yeah. And in terms of the shows in Mexico City, what were they like? I mean, I've never been to Mexico City, but just watching the shows on DVD and Binge and Purge and the one that they brought out from the Death Magnetic tour, they look very passionate, very hardcore. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think you've really hit the point there in and around really passionate, really high energy. It's probably the first show I can actually remember where actually the whole stadium is all standing up. So all the seats, one within the seating areas are all standing up, and you look around the periphery of everything, and everyone's just high energy, really, really engaged in the music and just being passionate and just being in the moment. Whereas I think you relate that to an American crowd, relate that to an Aussie crowd to a degree. Europe, even to a degree, it's the phones. Not that there isn't phones, but they're still engaged and just being so passionate about the music and just being so in the moment is the main emphasis in and around that. So a lot of energy. So you can just feel it. You can just feed off all that, and then you can see the band as well just feeding off that energy. So they'll just for regular tour shows within just a regular tour schedule, like they're the best shows that I've seen on tour by a long way. I think there's Mexico City and everything else from a regular tour schedule for sure. Amazing experience.
And a good set list too. I mean, the 4 shows there. They played some deep cuts, yeah.
Yeah, they went well, not so much deep cuts. So songs that they played off this tour, but then they revisit because they did. Structurally, it was a really different, because you had 32 songs right within. Well, actually, they cut it back to 30 last year, so 15 songs per set. So within that, there was a lot of change and interchangeable songs. So within the last, particularly night 4, they did go back to some songs that I didn't play. So You Must Burn, and there was a couple other songs within there, Cyanide as well, that they pulled out. So yeah, and Whiskey in the Jar, like songs like that really engage the crowd. And yeah, like excellent to sort of see and be privileged enough to like experience that was definitely something that will stay with me for a long time for sure.
Were they the only shows that you did for this year?
They were the only shows I did this year. Yes, I did
Okay.
Europe and the US last year. This year they were my
Right.
focal point. On my focal point this
Right.
year, the 4 shows. So across the 2 years, I saw shows in Europe, the US, and Mexico City.
So you went back to Europe last year. That was before US, right? Yeah, yeah. So what were those experiences like, going back to see Europe, seeing some old friends, see some new places you haven't been to?
Well, I actually went back to Amsterdam. I've been to Amsterdam before. I went
Oh, yeah,
there
okay.
on the worldwide tour. I actually saw a couple of arena shows there. So actually, the shows that I saw were the first shows of the M72 World Tour. That's where they kicked the tour off. That was in
Right.
Amsterdam. So that was a Johan Cruyff Stadium. So very interesting. So from some perspectives in and around just the show itself and just how it evolved from set list wise to like how the band engaged it was utilized the stage and how it all evolved from one lot of shows and then having a bit of a break and then you go to another lot of shows and then and then you actually see the last lot of shows from that particular year. So it was very interesting the way the quality of a band at that level. You can see just how great they are at just making sure that they maximize everything within that stage show, because that is, as you know, that show is so big and that stage is so big, and
Yeah.
to cover that space to make sure everyone's engaged. And like that was probably one part of it that was really difficult from the first show, was just how the band was utilizing that stage. So it just seemed very disjointed, and the band was really trying to, no disrespect to the band, but they were really trying to maximize utilizing the stage across the whole stadium, whereas it's really difficult with
Right.
stage size, right? So when the stage evolved, and sorry, when the tour evolved, then they started, it was more choreographed, where you had 4 different drum setups. So you had drum kit 1, and they would formulate their show from there, and then they'd work themselves around the actual donut and work themselves across that area of the stadium, and work themselves around. So it was quite choreographed, but it worked a lot better than them being in one point and then all trying to work themselves around. And physically, from that perspective, was a lot better, and it seemed to work a lot better, and it was more coherent and cohesive show as it progressed along.
Yeah, because well, obviously they're doing it for the first time, so
Yeah.
I noticed even too, like once the European tour, because I saw them in New Jersey. That was the first show for 2023 last year, and I think they were still trying to work it out, the sound there, because by the end of that US tour, I thought that the sound was a little bit better than what it was when it first started. Maybe it was just where I was standing, and definitely it definitely depends where you stand on the rail, whether you're in front of the Kirk or you're in the middle. There's like a little U shape, and so. But every time I moved around, it was always a different sound. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point in and around the audio side of it, the sound perspective of that show, because in the round is notorious for sound issues, and I can only imagine the engineering aspect of how you can then formulate a sound that actually projects across all areas of a stadium.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah.
So within that first show, so just to put some context, I actually decided to do seating. So I got a seating package just so I could get up in more of an advanced viewing position, just see how the whole thing worked. So the sound in Amsterdam, I have to say, was quite average at best. So because of that, we're getting fluctuating sides of a PA, where you hear Kirk, couldn't hear Kirk, you hear James, and then Lars's drums had come in, and it was just all over the place. And then from just utilizing the stage itself, as I mentioned earlier, the band were like nearly killing themselves physically to try to get the certain points of the stage because, again, it was so big. So that was Amsterdam. Right. So, which was, as I said before, was the first show of that particular tour. So you're talking about the first show of the North American leg. Things started to evolve. And then I actually saw them, I think, if I'm correct, I saw them in LA, maybe 2 shows, 3 shows after the show that you're talking about there. Was it, what did you say, Arlington?
New Jersey was the first one.
New Jersey, which was right. New Jersey was the first North American show on the M72 World Tour. Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Yes. Yep. So the sound was good, but I had a lot of just James, which is not a bad thing. But like when you've got a big solo from Kirk, you would expect it to be at least boosted. The one thing that I thought that stood out was, and he's really getting into it, and I really love that. I had a Lars appreciation.
Well, I think we all do as Metallica fans. He cops a lot of. We all know how much he cops outside of his laziness at times, and it can be there. Not on this tour. It has been there in the past. His inability to like practice and all that. They're all issues aside of this particular tour, but you're right. I think he really stepped up his game, and I totally agree, because I had the opportunity to be in the Snake Pit on one show in Mexico, so right up next to what you're talking about, and you're exactly right. You could hear actually him outside of the PA, which was quite a surreal, strange sort of experience, but very unique in that. It's just quite surreal where you hear the PA and then him doubling up, and you could hear everything just directly from his drumming outside of the PA. So it was definitely a unique experience.
And you're just talking about being in the Snake Pit. So what advantages did you like about being in the Snake Pit? I was lucky enough to get win a pass for the Arlington show, and that was the one where they actually did the video in the cinemas.
Yeah,
and that was pretty cool. I got to see myself a couple of times in the. it was good fun.
Also, Snake Pit is like the best place to see the show, right? I mean, if we go back to when they first introduced the Snake Pit off the Black Album, was the arena tour where they incorporated a viewing area within the stage itself. So that's evolved over time. So they reintroduced that back in 2012 on the Black Album anniversary tour in Europe. So I was fortunate enough to do the Snake Pit there, and I've seen it as it's evolved over the years right up until this particular tour. So that end of stage Snake Pit is a lot more intimate, but you still get that really feeling of them being surrounded by the band in certain points. So you got that 360, whereas on this day, on this particular in the round stage, on this particular tour, it's a lot bigger. So that experience is probably not so intimate, but there are elements where you can get so up close on this particular, probably the closest I've actually ever been. So I made the effort to get to various points. One particular point on this stage where the donor actually dips, and he's actually, one of his mics is actually like basically chest high. So basically he could touch his feet. So I did that.
Wow. Yeah.
In Mexico City. No barrier. You could touch the sound monitors and everything. There was no barrier or anything. You're basically right there. So that type of experience is quite surreal.
You've got to be really careful because there's no barrier in the Snake Pit. So you can go right up to the stage, and where I was, I could touch the wah-wah pedal. I could see the set list. I could pull the microphone down. So you have to be very, very careful with that. One time in Arlington, they threw their phone to Phil Ancino, Pantera, so we could get up and take a video of it. But a little dangerous, but they did have security there monitoring it. But you got to be careful with that, because That's getting all access.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's part of that. That's one of the selling points of the Snake Pit, that interaction and that really close, the opportunity to be so close and interactive with the band. And that's the big part of the selling point of being in the Snake Pit. But it is, the issue with this particular stage is when they move to other parts of the actual donut and the other parts of the stage, then it's real difficult to get an experience on that side. So either you stay there and experience it from there, and then they loop back around, and you get that real one-on-one sort of experience. But then they, as they move around, it was nearly every 4 songs, and they change to a different drum kit. So then when they move around, you find that interaction starts to wane, and then basically you're turning around, and then basically at the back end of everything. So that's where that's 2020, right? It's what you actually want. If you want that close-up experience and that 1 or 2, 3 or 4 songs, and you're basically touching his feet and he sweats, you could feel his sweat coming off, you could feel his breath, and he could literally kick you in the face, really, like his sound monitor.
Yeah, he could, yeah.
Like he really could. It was quite, as you rightly say, it's quite surreal from one side, but you're right, the security element is just, it only takes one idiot. But crazy from that side. But I think overall, the Snake Pit on this stage was an excellent experience. The Australian side of things, though, is an end of stage. We don't get the in the round stage. So that Snake Pit is going, as I mentioned earlier, they're going back to the more smaller, intimate type Snake Pit, which makes it even more exclusive because it's so smaller. So the people that got lucky with those tickets, I mean, I tried, and I'm still in the queue waiting. There was that many people. I was happy. Like it was crazy to think as a legacy member within Australia that there were that many legacy members in the first place. But anyway, getting to the point, it's so limited and such a smaller number, whereas the in the round Snake Pit's probably maybe 1,000, do you think? 800 to 1,000 people. Whereas I think this smaller stage, thinking about previous Snake Pits, it was probably 300 to 400 people. Yeah. So a lot smaller. So even though we haven't seen this stage yet, they could surprise us and be in the works to make something a little bit different and produce something a little bit different for moving forward. We don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see. But definitely a smaller Snake Pit.
Well, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, they sold out super fast, as expected. Yep. But those stadiums are not small. They're absolutely huge. Like Sydney, is it 80,000?
80,000 for Sydney. Marvel's a lot smaller, so I wasn't surprised that sold out.
Yeah, about 40.
Yeah, because on the worldwide tour, they actually did do 2 dates there. Well, were due to do 2 dates there because of demand. So they actually put on another show. So I was surprised that maybe they didn't do the MCG, but I don't know. I mean, those decisions are left to other people, but Shade Stadium. So yeah, Suncorp. Yeah.
Your shirt, Jason. Since the last time we've talked, there's a new chapter from Australia. You want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
There is a new chapter, yes. First Australian-wide chapter. So it's actually called Australian Anesthesia. So that we've always had Melbourne Militia, which has been probably the benchmark of Australian chapters. We've had Acting Like a Tasmaniac, which is another very specific.
Love that name.
Yeah, so this is the first Australian-wide chapter. So yeah, that's always exciting to be involved. So a friend of mine's actually kicked that off, and I've just been in support to get that moving along and get word out and incorporate more of people outside of just those cities that have a specific chapter. So yeah, that's always something good, and bring more people into the family, and enjoy that.
Shout out Damien. Damien is a good guy.
Pierce. We'll give him a shout out, Damien Pierce. Yeah, of course. Awesome guy. One of the best guys in the fan base, to be honest.
It's like, oh, you're from Australia too, and away we go. And then, do you know Jason? Oh, do you know Bobby? Oh, yeah. So it's a very, very small world. So, and how's your fan page going, Jace? What's the latest there?
I mean, it's going well. I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, I'm across a few pages now, so I'm actually doing an I Disappear page for the Australian tour, which is great. The legacy page just sort of looks after itself, honestly. any sort of tour announcement, etc. And people get the legacy status within that. It's always a good meeting point for people to get excited and build everything up, and that's a worldwide thing. But it's not a chapter, so we don't incorporate any of that. As I said, it looks after itself. With the I Disappear for Australia, we've got some things in the works in and around that. So a specific shirt that's for I Disappear members only, ticket holders only, which will really showcase.
Is that the one that you've got at the moment?
No, the chapter kangaroo shirt. No, we haven't unveiled that yet, mate. We're only just in the process of getting a design done and, ordering and process. We're going to wait till after Christmas because we are still a year away. So we might even let you in, mate, if you're lucky. I think you might already be in it, right?
Let's see. 12 months is a long way from.
It's a long way, and even talking about these shows now, it's like, I don't want to put any sort of. I don't want to jinx anything. We've just gone through so much as a fan base. So from the side of the cancelled tours and things not getting. Things not falling in our favour with some things. Not that we don't appreciate the band coming, but it's all part and parcel of being an Aussie fan, and we're very loyal. And as you said before, like it didn't cause any issues with ticket sales, or the passion for Metallica still very much alive and well in this part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jason, and we talked briefly about the album. The new album, you said that it was 2 years. So what was your opinion? Like now that you've listened to the songs live now as well?
Well, it always fluctuates with time, right? I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's very married with the Hardwired to Self-Destruct album. So, I mean, they're very much sister albums in a way. I think very, very solid album. I think across the 12 songs, in my opinion, I think there's probably maybe 10 solid songs and maybe one great song on there. I think I really love Rumour Mirrors. I love the Justice guitar duo through that. Just great riff through it, great vocal delivery. But then the last song of the album and the closer is probably what I classify as a Metallica masterpiece. So you have Inamorata. So I classify that as like the shortest 11-minute song you could actually ever hear by Metallica. Like it is an 11-minute opera. So it takes you on one of those journeys where very simple, very, very simple in terms of just the chord arrangements. There's nothing really complex happening, just a real Sabbathy, heavy groove through it. But then we get to a middle section, great Kirkley, great bass breakdown, and then we have that real crescendo at the end with that real fire towards a build and momentum, and it just takes you on a journey, and it just hits you in a place that it's just that real level of what Metallica can really bring from the emotional side. So yeah, solid in the live setting as well. I really do like Too Far Gone. Shadows Follows, another good song. Lux Eterna all fit well. If Darkness Has a Sun, they all fit really well within the live setting, and again another great release by the band, and we're really fortunate the band still can really challenge themselves and offer up different, something that's not following just a blueprint that they've done before, and I really love that about Metallica.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to Lars, I mean, they're not like just playing a beat to a song. He really physically, it's a physical challenge for Lars to get up there and play those songs. There's a lot of double kick, like Lux Eterna is very, very fast. And just to see him be able to still do that, it just blows my mind. One thing about the new songs is hearing that Inamorata on the last leg of the tour in Europe this year. It just so good. I didn't think they would ever play it because it's such a long song. But then again, it's an 11-minute song. Would you rather have two fast songs or Inamorata?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not really fast on numbers. I mean, I'm like you. It was great to do that live. It fits well. Generally speaking, does it create a little bit of, in terms of energy, does things drop for an 11-minute song? Of course it's going to.
Yes.
That's just pass up a song of that length. But I mean, for me, it's just one of those songs, and it takes some balls, man, to like put in an 11-minute song in a set list.
Yes.
So you've got to give them credit for
Definitely.
that. And I think will they continue that? Possibly not, because they did drop that for night 4 in Mexico City. So whether that's a precursor for how they're thinking moving forward, because you do really have to revamp everything on a tour, and you just don't want to follow. Of course, there's going to be a set list structure, particularly when you're following new album tour. So hopefully there's a new song. They'll definitely world premiere a couple more. There's I think 3 songs they haven't played yet. Crown of Barbed Wire, Room and Mirrors they haven't played yet. So yeah, there's a couple in there that you would hope that they might. Chasing Light is the other one. So yeah, there's still options there for them to freshen up the set list.
I can't see them playing that in a Murata every set in Australia. It's just not feasible. Like if you're going to play single, you're going to have to, in my opinion, they're going to have to mix it up a little bit. Like 15 songs in the set and only one. It's going to have to be different every night. I really like what they did for the Soundwave tour and the tour that before that in Australia, where they sort of picked an album and they went, okay, we've got to play all the classics. But then Brisbane, for example, was Harvester, Short of Straw. They did 4 or 5 songs from Injustice, and then they'd go to Sydney and did 4 or 5 songs from Rod the Lightning, and then Melbourne was Puppet. So I like that idea, but I don't know whether they're going to have a ton of new fans. People are just going to have to realize that there's going to be so many new Metallica fans coming there. So obviously they've got to play the big hits, but yeah.
That's the challenge when you're talking about one-off shows. Where I was mainly focusing on was when you have a no repeat weekend where you can spread across. That's why that format works so well. You can spread across 30 songs and really spread those songs and go deep across a whole different range of song lengths, etc. Right. So when you go strip that back and look to just a one-off with a 15-song set list, where we're at the moment, that is the challenge. So hopefully from my perspective, they can be brave. I saw Iron Maiden not too long ago, and they left out. I mean, there was some
Under the Hills. That's ballsy as well.
That's very ballsy, and I mean, we could argue which songs all day about what songs could have a rest and which songs could maybe be in a more of a variation slot, where they're just changing things up and things like that. Yeah, it's just an interesting conversation, but they do have to be brave, because what can happen is, as we know, if you're incorporating maybe 6 to 7 to up to 8 staples now or greatest hit songs, it doesn't leave much out of a 15-minute set where you actually go with those 3 or 4 cuts or to add to your 15 songs. So yeah, there's definitely challenges in there, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens, because otherwise you can fall into a nostalgia act very, very quickly. Not that that's where they're at, but it can happen very quickly if you go down the safe road, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've missed 2 albums since the last time they've played here. So Death Magnetic was the last tour, so 12 years for only 2 albums. that's crazy. But just the way it is, right, with COVID and.
Yeah, of course. There's you've got to add COVID in there as well, but just got to manage expectations. I read a lot in and around a lot of the official forums and a lot of Facebook fan groups, and they should really hardwire centric the set list because we missed that. It was like, well, you're going to go back to that. I just don't think they will. I don't think Metallica think that way. I just think
they don't think that way.
No, it's a new album tour. If you get a spit out the bone where you've been complaining in one of those.
I'm sure they will. Either way, mate, it's exciting times no matter what. We're going to do something a little bit different. So you have done your 80th show. Was that in Mexico?
I did hit 80 shows in Mexico, yes. Yeah.
And that was actually
my 22nd country as well. So I've been getting Yeah, that's probably more so the more thing that I'm more proud of. The fact is just getting to shows, because as you know, as an Aussie, it's the challenge of getting there, right?
Yes.
It's easy jumping. So the fact
Absolutely.
is, when I actually looked at it, I went, wow, that's crazy to one side, but also like
Impressive.
it sort of suggests in and around the passion and dedication to get to a lot of shows. So yeah, I hit 80, mate, and I know you hit 50 last year. So was it this year?
Yes.
50?
50 in LA. Very. Yeah, I was proud. It was a great show too. The one in LA was really really good. I had such a big gap there between the whole, and of course the tour being cancelled, the COVID. I got COVID. I was scheduled to go to a US.
Yeah.
That whole last year got me up to 50, and now
Mate,
doing.
that's a
Yeah, thank
significant
you. And
positive. That's the thing that a lot of the fan base doesn't really understand. They just see the number, and I know a lot of the Americans and a lot of Europeans can turn their nose up a little bit at numbers and the show number posturing, but they don't really get the perspective of just the level of commitment and dedication and passion it gets to get to a show. So congratulations, mate. That's awesome.
We're going to talk about our top shows that we've been to. So you want to talk about some of your highlight shows?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and it just whatever way that you've got your special shows, you've got like your one-off shows that were like very special for just that fact. But then you've got special shows because it's your first show. So I mean, there's a lot to get through. But I mean, for me, you've also always got to mention your first show. So my first show was the first time they visited Australia on the Damaged Justice tour in 1989. That was at the Horden.
Yes.
So I mean, you know, impressionable. What was I, 16, 17-year-old? You know, and the band at that particular point too was just vicious. They were just, I'll be honest, I was just shitting myself. You just cut the energy with a knife. They were just so ferocious and so much energy and so much power and so much aggression. So yeah, I always put that one in and around a conversation around favourite shows.
Where was that show, mate?
Horden Pavilion, actually, the old
Horden.
Horden.
The Horden Pavilion.
Which is
because
now
Lars always tells the story about.
What about you, Craig? You want to discuss yours, or do you want to just keep me?
Yeah, there's a few. I would say definitely I like yours. The first time I saw the band play, it was in our hometown of Newcastle. It was just the build up because they didn't come to Australia for the Load tour, so I was probably a bit too young for that anyway. But yeah, when they come for the Reload tour, the hype was so good, and it was so old school, like lining up to buy your ticket, and the lineup was around like about 100 meters deep to buy your ticket, and then the whole experience of lining up, and I got to listen to the band rehearse, and the glass was shaking when Lars was hitting the kick pedal. Such an amazing experience. That was so loud. And
on my list too. So that was actually going to be my next show that I was going to talk about. So for me, that
was.
All
right. Okay.
Yeah,
so you're sick, yeah?
Yeah, it's in my list because obviously that's the first and only time Metallica has played in Newcastle, Australia. So there's that side. And then it was also the first time I got to meet the band. So I did a full meet and greet with the four members of the band. And then I also did some work with what they actually did was reach out to certain members within the fan club to do some work for the fan club. So I actually I was actually inside for the rehearsal. So I actually saw them going through 3 or 4 songs. They were working very much on what I can vividly remember was them working on all the acoustic side of things, because it was the first time they incorporated an acoustic element to their live shows. Not that they hadn't done acoustic shows previous to that, only acoustic shows for charity, etc. But this was the first time they incorporated an acoustic element within their set.
And for me, the second one, it's a big toss-up between, I would say, the 30th anniversary shows in San Francisco, where they did 4 nights and they had Jason Newsted back, Dave Mustaine, Ozzy Osbourne, Kid Rock. There was all these celebrities that come out. There was so many.
Marion
And
Faithfull.
the good thing about that, and it'll never happen again, is that I think they played 18 songs, maybe 20 songs at that stage. And Seek and Destroy was the only one that they played at every night. Every other song was different, which was just mind-blowing to see. It's just for a hardcore fan that follows the band around the world, to see those shows was just...
Yeah, I was going to get to that. That was going to be my first. So I'm just going through from the bottom to the top. So you've gone all the way to the very top. So that's definitely for me, there's definitely the 30-year shows and everything else for everything you've just alluded to. I mean, the whole thing was just a special, out of this world, surreal, walking into a theatre of that size to see a band of that caliber. Just everything was so unique and different. A New Orleans marching band walks through to kick the night off, and you had like Jason Newsted and Ray Burton up in the VIP section and chanting out Jason, and then seeing Jason with the band. I mean, and then and really just narrowing it down to make it like a real intimate, really one-off. The quizzes with the fans, and up on stage, all
Jim
telling
Brewer.
stories. The banter with Jim Brewer, and so I mean, that's definitely my favourite. But then, like, as we work, there's some shows in there as well. So for me, there's also S&M. So I actually saw S&M, the original.
Oh yes.
So I mean, that's definitely within that conversation. So it's hard to split that.
You've seen both of them, right?
I have seen both of them. Yeah. So definitely S&M 2 was a lot more polished and had a lot more elements in and around the production, and it was all really put together a lot better. Whereas S&M was just smack you in the face. It was so loud and powerful. The mix was sort of off here and there, but it was just the punch and just that side of it in a very small theatre. But there was also the element of just the context of just where the band were at that particular stage, because you had the load element, right? Whereas people thought of what's happening. There was a left turn musically, there was the image, it was all in that. People and S&M really fitted in that category as well, because people go, what the hell are they doing? It become more of an iconic thing as time went on, and people actually start to hear all that, and that really built as it moved forward. But at the particular time, I bought a pass through the Metclub for $50 and walked straight in. No dramas whatsoever. Got it through the mail. To think of that now is actually crazy. So that show definitely sits up there. So have you got another one, Craig?
I would say the first time that I got a meet and greet in the US, it was the first show of the Death Magnetic in 2008. We got to meet the band, then we got to go down and watch the rehearsal show. That was like a full dress rehearsal.
Oh wow!
And they played a long set. They were just, and at the end they were just going, "Hey guys, what do you want us to play? Just pick a song." I yelled out, "And Justice for All." I was like, "Okay, cue the music, cue the intro." And they're playing Ride the Lightning, and they stopped it. And Lars and James said to Kirk, like, you're coming in too early for that solo. You've got to wait for it. You've got to wait for it to come in. And then Kurt's just like, whatever. And then they said, come on, let's try it again. And then they got to that same spot again, and he was right on the money. So there's just that little note. And so it's just amazing just to see behind the scenes of that, like just being like a jam rehearsal. But that definitely sticks out as well.
That's the sad part in and around the Metclub, which was the Metallica fan club, right? Where in the earlier days when it first kicked off, we had those type of experiences were like just made that era just so special, right? One of my other ones was, so they actually did their own festival in 2012 and 2013, which was the Orion Festival. So within that, it was their festival, right? So they had elements of each 4 members had their own showcasing their own hobbies and interests. So James had a car club and all his collection, and Kirk had a horror of castle, and Lars had a like literature, movie seminars with his father, etc. So within that was great, because the first one was they played over 2 nights in Atlantic City. So one night they played Ride the Lightning from back to front, and then the second night they played the Black Album in full, first time in the US. So that was definitely a special mention. But 2013 was one that sits really high, because that one was split over 2 headliners. Still Metallica's festival, but they also had 2 headliners. So Red Hot Chili Peppers one day, Metallica the second night. For the day that Chili Peppers played, there was all these like messages coming through social media and all these sort of inferences in and around what this band's going to play, and they were sort of setting up something. And then next thing you know, Metallica comes out as Dehan, which was an actor from the movie that they were actually making.
Yes.
And played Kill 'Em All, because it was the anniversary of Kill 'Em All, on the back of a small flatbed truck. Really, it was a small stage at the back end of the festival. So I mean, that sits very highly as well. That was just a holy shit moment. They come out middle of the day, sunglasses on, James with his Kill 'Em All belt. Something that was a real surprise. So that definitely sits up there as well. That was just amazing. Those festivals are great because they incorporated a lot, not only that, but then the surprises and that type of performance. But then the Metclub had their own little section, had a little bit compound at the back of the stage, and we get access to look onto the stage and see shows from up there. And we had our own like toileting and our own food, and like they had a little museum in there only for Metclub members only. So it touches on that period of time where that interaction and just sort of getting a little bit of special treatment and acknowledgement of just fans of that next level. So that's definitely a special mention for me as well, that show.
What an incredible show that one was. I think one more that I'll talk about, when they come to do the Big Day Out. The Big Day Out tour, that was 2004 for St. Anger, and they did the Big Day Out festival. So I think it was every 3 or 4 days they would play at a different city, and then in between that they would do their own shows. So they did Brisbane, I think they did Sydney, 2 shows in Sydney, and then the one show in Melbourne, their own show. It was at the
Sydney Myer Music Bowl.
That's the one, the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. And
that was incredible. Yeah,
it was just a different vibe. I'd never seen Metallica play at an amphitheater, and the set list that they chose that night is still arguably one of the best set lists, in my opinion, that I've seen them play. It was just classic after classic song, and then also they did, if my memory, the Unnamed Feeling.
One. Yeah, the Unnamed Feeling. They had Friends, they had St. Anger, and they ended that show with Die Die My Darling and Hit the Lights. I actually flew down for that. I actually flew down the day of that show and then went and slept at the airport to get the red eye back home.
Oh, really?
I understand what you're saying about that amphitheater, and you actually hit the nail on the head with it. And that was a special. I'd probably go as far as say it's probably one of the best shows in Australia, to be honest.
Being right up the front there was just another memorable one. Well, one more, Jace. What have you got for me?
Well, I mean, I'd have to put in there the Jonny Zazula Tribute Show. So I'll add that in there. He actually was a band the guy that actually had Megaforce Records who really gave Metallica their first break. So they did a tribute show for them in 2022. And the last show I'll comment on is my last actually show I just did. So that was Mexico City Night 4. I actually did that from a platform. So the platform is the best place to ever see a show. So within the show itself, you had the in the round donut, but on the periphery of the donut, you had 8 separate towers. So at the bottom of the tower, they actually built platforms, and gave people an opportunity to actually see the show from there. And I'd have to say it's the most surreal experience I've ever had at a show, because you actually do feel part of the show.
I'll leave with just one more, and I just thought about it just then. I went to Yankee Stadium to watch the Big Four.
That would have been 2011.
2011, right? Okay, and that whole experience was awesome. Not only getting to see Metallica play, but to see Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer. I'm big fans of Megadeth and Anthrax. Dave Mustaine coming out in a neck brace and threatening to cancel the show, and all the rumors happening. And it was the first time I saw somebody in a wheelchair crowd surfing in a wheelchair, disabled guy. So it was a lot of firsts. Yeah, just another amazing show.
That was the best show, as in that tour, because I actually saw it in Sonosphere in the UK, and it was with Diamond Head.
Yeah, you're right.
It was part of it, and it didn't have the same feel and energy as what I saw with the Yankee Stadium show. So, yeah, I mean,
right.
I definitely agree. That Yankee Stadium show is definitely an iconic one for sure. So that's an awesome one, mate. You got a nice list there within your 50. So I guess that's what it's about, right? The quality over quantity.
Yeah, just trying to get the right time, trying to juggle work and finance, and just trying to make sure that you can survive, and you got a place to stay, and there's still more to come, mate. That's the good thing.
Well, let's hope some of these Australian shows sit up in those shows that we've just talked about, particularly from the Australian side, because that's a pretty special thing, and it's probably something we mightn't experience again. So I agree, just bringing everyone together. That's what it's more for me about these days, bringing all your friends together and experiencing that moment with people you care about and love the same bands. That's true. Always a pleasure to talk to you, mate. Thanks for having me again. It's always...
Yeah, thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate your time, and I'll try and catch up with you in Christmas.
Righto, buddy. I'll talk to you then, mate.